listening to the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
Welcome back in. Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. We continue to remember the life of the great Roy Halladay, who passed away yesterday at the age of 40. And so many good memories, so many good people to talk to in an unfortunate time, but we need to continue to pay our respect to his family and remember the life and celebrate the life of Roy Halladay, and we'll do that until we get off air today at 6 p.m. Now joining us on the hotline is someone that knew Roy Halladay very well during his time with the Philadelphia Phillies organization, and that's Chris Wheeler. Wheels is kind enough to hop on board with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Chris, once again, I send my condolences to you on the loss of Doc Halladay. Appreciate you coming on. How are you?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Zach. It's great to talk with you, unfortunately, under these circumstances. But, Phillies family's had a tough year. That's the fifth person that we lost. The first four guys were, kind of banged up and ill, but this one yesterday was shocking.
You're right. This is shocking and it's tragic. And I know a lot of people will look at his baseball career today, but the people that knew him best always talked about how family was of the utmost importance to him. My heart just breaks for his family, his wife, and his two boys. Those are the people I'm thinking about most today.
Well, that's all true. He was very much into, Brandy and those two kids. And Doc was always more I always felt Doc was more comfortable around kids than adults anyway. He really, he kind of had his guard up until he got to know somebody really well, or basically until he was out of the game, and then he was great to talk to. Then he was a lot more personable. He wasn't competing all the time and staying in that unbelievable shape that he was in. So you hit it right on the head. He was very much a family guy. He loved to pitch. He loved to be around a Major League Baseball team and organization and do those kind of things. And when it was time to walk away, he had no problem doing it. He didn't try to hang on too long. He just basically took a hike and went on with his life.
And we all know there are great athletes in our game, but some people, what make really superstars to me are the great athletes that could be also great people, and that's what Roy Halladay was. He was a perfect role model for little kids and for anyone that was really watching the Phillies at that time, or even going back to Toronto. And this was someone, and you hear all the tributes. You heard Dave talk last night, Cole Hamels as well. This was a great pitcher, a great teammate, and a great family man. Just talk about what really seemed like one of those perfect people in Roy Halladay, who was just able to understand his importance on the mound, but also his importance off the field.
I think any of us who were lucky enough to be touched by him, by his life, are in agreement, and that's what you're hearing, Zach. How much everybody respects him and cares about him. He had a tremendous amount of respect for the game of baseball and how to be a pro on and off the field. Sometimes that gets lost with certain guys, never with him. He was very much into telling somebody else that, hey, straighten up. You're not acting like a professional. This is the way to do it. He could do those kind of things, and he was so physically imposing. He was so big that, he could just look at somebody and melt them. So he could get his point across that way. He was good with the media. He wasn't going to be a buddy with guys. That wasn't the way he did things. But if someone had to talk to him about something, or had a, an interview set up with him, or even broached him with a subject that he was okay with and comfortable with, he was fine. He wasn't the type of guy to make snide remarks at reporters or guys with microphones or those kind of things, unless they brought it on themselves, and then he might just cut something off. But that wasn't his style. He was a gentleman, a professional, and one of the fiercest competitors. I've been lucky enough to be around two of the fiercest ever, and Steve Carlton and Roy Halladay. And it was game on, boy. When it was their turn to pitch, it was their time to get out there. They wanted to finish what they started, and that's the way they approached it.
You don't know how the importance of the team was to Roy Halladay, and he just wanted to win, and he wanted to get that World Series championship, which unfortunately he didn't, but he was a part of many great Phillies memories, especially with that no-hitter in the postseason. But getting back to the team aspect, I heard the story last night that Cole was sharing where everyone was calling them the four aces, and Roy made it clear from the start that they were five aces and included Joe Blanton in that conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, that happened early on. Joe was funny the day the day they were introducing those guys, and someone said something about, well, one of you up there has a World Series ring, meaning Cole Hamels. And Joe Blant went, hey, I got one too. He put his hand up. So yeah, Joe was the guy that was easy to forget in that group. But Joe was a very, very good major league pitcher. In fact, he's still pitching, as you well know. He was with Washington this year. He still and was the Dodgers the year before, pitching effectively out of the bullpen. Out of all of them, he and Cole are the ones that are left. So but that's the way Roy was. It was not about him. It was no mistake or no coincidence that he and Chase Utley became very close. And that's kind of unusual because pitchers and position players, even on their same team, on their own team, don't necessarily become buddy-buddy because there's kind of an adversarial role there. But those two guys really liked each other, really admired each other, and they were kind of similar. They it was game on every day for those two, and they really, really respected each other.
And I saw Chase did share something on Instagram last night, and when Chase Utley was here, I was like, there's no way anyone ever beats him to the ballpark, but the one person that did was Roy Halladay, because he shared that story last night, first spring training day, 5:45 a.m., and he thought Roy got caught in the rain, but it was actually he was soaking wet from his workout, so that's pretty special, and you have to imagine the hard work from that both those guys did display is why they had such a special connection.
Yeah, I could just picture that's where the action was. Okay, I guess it's all true. I guess this guy is pretty competitive and a workout freak. Yeah, that was a great story. I'd never heard that before. We all knew that Doc got there before everybody. In fact, they gave him a key to get in the complex, to get in there before everybody else.
Wow.
Because he was there that early. That's what he did. So that was his thing, and we had heard about that. We knew so much about him anyway, Zach, because you've been down there. The Blue Jays trained right up the street from us, basically, in Dunedin. It's 5 miles away. So we play them all the time, and we know their people. We play them in Clearwater, play them in Dunedin. So we saw Roy Halladay pitch a lot, and he would pitch in an exhibition game, and it was all business. I mean, he wasn't out there just to get his work in. He was out to get people out. That's what he did. That's the way he competed. So we heard all the stories about him. You saw the way he competed in exhibition games, and also during the regular season when we play him in interleague play. So it was no surprise that when we heard those stories that they were all true and that he showed up before everybody else.
Chris Wheeler with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show, remembering the life of Roy Halladay, who unfortunately passed away yesterday at the age of 40. Another one of those team stories where you just say this guy just gets it is after the perfect game in Miami. A few weeks later, he finds a way to get everyone watches on the team. And this was not only managers and coaches and players. This was the person that opened up the door to the clubhouse, security. That was really cool what he did, and I heard Nelson Figueroa share that last night.
Yeah, well, he got it. Doc was a guy that just understood the trainers, the equipment people, all the support people that nobody hears anything about and don't make a lot of money, and they're very, very important to a Major League Baseball team's operation and to the players. And some players appreciate them, some don't really care. And Doc always got the big picture. So when we heard he did that, nobody was surprised because that's the kind of person he was. There's an expression in our game, some guys get it and some guys don't get it, and he got it.
And there's no question about that. The day that the Phillies acquired him in their trade from the Toronto Blue Jays, what do you remember about that day, Wheels?
I remember how excited I was because I'd seen him, like I said, Zach, I'd seen him pitch. It wasn't like this was some guy coming from the American League that he didn't know anything about. He had heard, boy, he was really good, but I wonder what he throws. We knew what he had. We knew that he couldn't throw the ball straight. And how he competed, and he could hit a corner anytime he wanted to, and he kept the ball at the knees all the time. And then when he came over, and Rich Doobie helped him with that changeup, oh my God, when he learned that pitch, that thing went straight down, that little half split that he was throwing for a changeup, and that really made him even more effective. I just remember being very, very excited, and I knew we had given up Drabek in the deal, who at the time, unfortunately for Drabek, he got hurt a lot. Had a lot of elbow surgeries, and the other guy that was big in that deal was Chase Darno, who has had a real good major league career with the Mets, and that was another guy we didn't want to give up. And I think Ghost was in that deal too, who's also had a up and down major league career. So there were players in that deal, really young talent that you didn't necessarily want to give up. And then you thought, we just got Roy Halladay, for crying out loud. It's a Cy Young Award winner coming over. Now, was he going to pitch a no-hitter and a perfect game in the same year? Well, come on. That was just unbelievable to think that he could do those kind of things. But it was just a matter of thinking, wow, we just got an unbelievable. It was like Carlos Ruiz was quoted as saying at the time, "You got me a caballo." You got me and you could just hear Chooch say caballo, meaning a horse, and that's exactly what Ruben did in that deal.
How about that relationship that he had with Chooch? Because that was an extra special one.
Oh man, yeah, that was one of those ones that's not an old wives' tale or anything. He really did. Those two guys, they got on right away on the same page. Now Chooch, when Doc first came over, he was limited in his English and his communication skills. He obviously developed them as time went along, and his English was great within a few years. And those two, I'll never forget the day that they evidently the story came out, because Roy didn't like to talk about himself, but he got him one day and said, "You're going with me." The day they were going over, he was going over to pitch in Tampa against the Yankees, and that Steinbrenner Field's about 30 minutes, maybe half an hour from the complex, from the ballpark in Clearwater, and they drove over together. And that was one time where they really bonded and talked about a lot of things, baseball and other things. And Roy just really appreciated Carlos. All you have to do is see his face embracing Carlos Ruiz after the perfect game and after the no-hitter. And Doc didn't smile during the games, but boy, when that game ended, then you saw that huge, warm smile that he could exhibit, when things were right and when he was happy, and he and Chooch really celebrated, and that was real.
You know how close he was to Charlie Manuel as well, and if you look at also a guy that was here for 4 years, which is a concise time, he really did love these fans here in Philadelphia. What did you think it was that made him feel so connected to Philadelphia? For someone with the majority of his career, he was a Toronto Blue Jay.
Well, as far as Charlie goes, yeah, they were good. They were on the same page, and Charlie did not like to take him out of games.
He didn't.
People kind of forget that when Doc came over here, as you just mentioned, Zach, he's in the American League his whole career. Well, they don't have the DH. They have the DH over there. So managers aren't coming out and taking guys out of games that often. You don't have that managerial move where you have to come get a guy at a certain point, or you're in a close game, or you're thinking about doubles. All those kind of things that come into play in a National League game that you don't have in the American League. So he was used to just being out there. And Charlie used to, Charlie. I mean, I spent so much time with Charlie doing pregame shows, so we knew each other. They were like brothers almost. And Charlie said, "I don't like to go get him. I don't like that. I don't like that look. Then when I get out there, the way he'd look at me, and he'd say, Dubes, I got to go get him. I don't want to do it." And he'd go out and get him, and Doc would hand him the ball, and you'd see Doc kind of talking out of the corner of his mouth to either Jimmy Rollins or Chooch or somebody, and basically, is he coming? Is he coming out? And you'd see his eyes like, I don't want to come out of this game. So that's what I think fans loved about him. He was so competitive. He was a Philadelphia Phillies fan, kind of Philadelphia player, that he went out there kind of blue collar and just went out and busted it the whole time he was there. You knew the whole time that Roy Halladay was on the mound that you were getting max effort. It didn't always work out. But even to the end, when he was struggling so much and nothing was coming out the way that it did before, his stuff had diminished so much because of the injuries that he had, he was still out there grinding, and I think people appreciated that to the very end with him.
And you're exactly right, because I remember him apologizing for being hurt, and that's something that's not his fault. But you hear someone apologize, when he had a rare bad start. That's what made him something that was so special, just because he cared more than anybody about being the best person that he could be and the best pitcher he could be.
Well, I remember that game that he pitched against Miami when it was starting to show that he was struggling. I think he gave up a grand slam in the first inning. They may have batted around +1. And he said after the game, "I'm embarrassed, and I apologize to the fans who drove all the way out here today and spent their hard-earned money, and that's what I gave them in return." But the bottom line was he was hurt, and he wasn't the same guy, and he was doing the best he could, yet he was still thinking about people that had paid money and driven there on a Sunday afternoon with their families, I remember that was the day we had a race in the area, and the traffic was all backed up, and the game started late, and everything was kind of out of whack that day. And that's my point about him. He understood all that. He knew what people had gone through to get to the ballpark that particular day, and he had just been awful and given up a lot of runs in the first inning, and he apologized for that.
Well, Chris, once again, we send our condolences to you on the loss of the great Roy Halladay. We appreciate you giving us some perspective, and we can't thank you enough. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Zach. It's great talking with you anytime. You keep in touch now.
You got it. There is Chris Wheeler, Wheels, with us on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.